Hello and welcome to this week's show where I'm delighted to be joined by Cara Kresge, co-founder and chief growth officer at C Squared Workforce Solutions. I've had the opportunity, Cara, to meet you over the last couple of months, and we've got so many mutual friends, acquaintances, and partners in common. And Cara, I hope you don't mind me describing you as such, but in some ways you're the hidden hand behind the extended workforce world. And the amount of enterprise buyers and part of the community that speak so highly of you, it's really amazing. So, Cara, I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show. Can't wait to tap into that brain of yours, which is pretty extensive. I have to say, in our discussions though thus far. A really warm welcome to the Open Talent Report. It's my first episode after the summer, Cara, and I'm probably a bit ring rusty, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm not as lucid and articulate as ever, if I ever was. But Cara, warm welcome to the show. How the hell are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And don't worry about being rusty. I love to tell people that all of my chattiness is fueled by anxiety. It's not actually an extroversion as most people assume. So we'll get through it together
Good.
today.
Good, Cara. I think that's probably similar to myself. I'm extrovert in some ways, but I'd rather be reading all those books behind me some days than talking to people. But that's just me. That's me. But Cara, this podcast is about you, and rightly so. So, Cara, just before we kick off into some of the topics we want to cover on today's show, what's your story? How did you become the chief growth officer and co-founder at C Squared Workforce Solution? And as much detail or not as you're prepared to talk about.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, you know, I I had already worked. So when I started my career very early on, I was really lucky, and like so many people, I fell into staffing. And that's a long story, but I did that for about a year. And then I had an amazing boss, Brian Sakowski, actually, who had left. And I had called him and said, "What do you do when you leave staffing?" And he's like, "Oh, come work for me at this new way of managing extended workforce, this very tech forward solution," which was IQN, which at the time was like maybe 50 people. And I had my very first customer in Northrop Grumman, and I was on site and I was doing all these things. And those were the days when IQN and Fieldglass were both independently owned, and they were both very much startup environments. And so you kind of had to do all the jobs. I was in the MSP side, but I also had to sell it, implement it, manage teams, do all the things. And it was an amazing learning experience. And then I went from that to working at Brightfield, and after Brightfield, which at the time was pure consulting, so there was no TDX yet, although it was in contemplation. And when Jason decided to transition to being a tech forward firm and a data science company, that really wasn't what I was good at. And so I departed and went back to work for Brian briefly well, for a few years at Impellum, and had a multitude of jobs there, built out a customer office, um, reimagined implementations in some cases, did a whole bunch of things, right? And then I got recruited by Google. I'm like, hey, if I'm ever going to be on the buy side, I guess I should do that. But my very first email there was a hiring freeze announcement. And so it was a year that was a job that was very different than the job that I had originally taken. And at the end of that, I, found myself kind of wondering what to do. And I mean, there's always that fear. It's like, am I even employable? I feel like I've worked everywhere. What am I going to do now? I don't know. And it was
Yeah.
around Thanksgiving. And
Well,
so, I had decided, hey, I think I'm going to try out consulting, even if it's short term, see how it goes. And at this time, my now co-founder, Christina, was also departing from AGS. She and I had worked together in Pelham. We had been friends for many years prior, and she has a very similar background. And we said, let's see what we can do. And ultimately, the foundation of that decision to really put an umph behind consulting was this idea that I don't want to continue to have to give customers advice that always land back at my personal director strategy or the company I work for. If you are doing advisement as an MSP, part of your role is to make sure that customers are swayed back into buying things from your MSP. That's true of a VMS. That's true even if you're working in a big company, you have company strategies and you're constantly aligning your solutions to those. And so being kind of outside looking in, I get not only a lot of variety, which means that I get to learn continuously, which I just love, but I also get to give out advice to customers that is very creative, very unique to their position, very unique to their goals. And honestly, doesn't really benefit me in any way other than I have a very satisfied and happy customer and the pride of knowing that the company was impacted by what I did in the way it needed to be impacted and not in the way I needed it impacted, if that makes sense.
It does, Cara. And Cara, I've a couple of questions, right?
Mhm.
First question is, um, when you went to Google after working in the advisory world and almost on the solution side or the sell side, if you like, what the hell was that like, right? Because on the sell side and the solution side and the advisory side, I imagine it's quite different, right? Having been a practitioner for some side, what was it like in day one when you went into Google and you've got this huge bloody company and you're like, whoa, where do I start? What do I do? Like I've been used to solutioning for these guys? Like, was it sort of a difficult transition into that world or no?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a great company, and I would never, like, I have nothing bad to say about them, and it was an amazing learning experience. I would say that, and without, any breaching of NDAs, I have to think out how to put this. Um, I mean, I think my brain is a good fit, but my behaviors are probably not, right? Because I'm not, just overly personal here, but I mean, if I think about some of my personal attributes as far as, I'm dyslexic, I have severe ADHD, I am, my mind just does not work in certain blocks. And so I less about Google and probably more about big companies in general.
Sure.
I am very gifted at helping very large companies get and buy what they need. I
Yes,
don't know that steady state process management ongoing for years would have ever been a good role for me.
I
Um,
understand.
so guys, less about that brand and more about just, it's not a startup anymore. I probably was fit for it when it was like 12 people in a garage or something.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting, Cara. I share the same. I don't know, maybe challenge issues to myself, right? I'm not dyslexic or nor do I have ADHD, but I think I'm temperamentally unsuited to working in a huge company with loads of processes where you have to like. And I'm not talking about Google here. I'm just talking about large enterprise generally, or some medium ones. I think I'm basically unemployable, which is really sad to say. Um, but I don't think I would have it any other way, right? Because I think the autonomy, the risk taking, the creativity, the energy, the enthusiasm, the excitement that you get from starting a company is if you've got that personality and you don't want to be sitting at a desk, bloody ticking boxes, I think it's amazing. And I'm just wondering, do you agree with that? And getting your own company off the ground, Cara, with your co-founder, that must have been all of those things and maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky that Christina and I are a good balance. I mean, Christina is execution excellence all day. She's consistently grounded in what is practical and where I can be very, you've ever taken those Gartner things, right? Like a Gartner test. One of my executive coach who I just adore, Dana Mahina, formerly Amato, right? So a lot of people know her in the industry. She's really big into the Gartner test. And like one of the things that you do, I mean, there's 200,000 people take it annually. It's very data driven. And like my first is always ideation, second futuristic, right? Third
Yeah,
maximizer, fourth activator. And so it is truly in my nature to be
yeah,
entrepreneurial. But what's funny is I think about how my customers benefit from that, right? Because at the
yes,
same time, at the dare I say I'm old, I've been doing this for a really long time. And because I've worked in a variety of roles in a variety of companies and I've had to look at things from so many different perspectives, I do think that even though I have all of these tendencies, we tend to be able to bring really practical solutions to our
sure.
customers because we have so much experience.
Yes,
But to your point, I don't actually have to live day to day with a guardrail on my advisement outside of just meeting customers where they are.
yeah.
And that's kind of an easier guardrail than a career guardrail.
Yeah, I agree. And like Cara, when you guys set up your company, like I think I'd love to hear your perspective on what that was like getting it off the ground and winning your first sort of customers. Like, was
Yeah.
it tough?
So it's an interesting question. So again, I'll just be really raw. I don't really have
Yeah,
another speed. I don't have another speed, so hopefully
this
that
is
that's
good. That's why I love having you on the show. Thank you.
okay. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we didn't set it up with a lot of intention. I mean, I make that joke like maybe
Yeah,
I was unemployable for a reason, right? Because and I had worked at a lot of places and I didn't know how I could possibly fit back into any specific role. And I don't mean that people that are in roles at companies are not doing amazing work. I should probably be really mindful to say that out loud. It's not like you have a bunch of doll thinkers. Some of the smartest people I know are leading some of the world's largest companies,
I
and I
agree.
say that very real, like very literally. It just wasn't the right fit for me,
Yeah,
or Christina. As far as like the process of setting up the company, though, I don't know that we did it with as much intention as we would have. Now, hindsight being 2020, we didn't
yeah,
say, "Oh, we're going to grow a company that's going to bill X. We're going to have Y amount by X time." That's something that we sort of evolved into. We're there now, but we weren't
yeah,
there when we started. When we started, it was like, "Let's try this. I don't know, can we do it?" Um, and what really helped was we had both have had not only a lot of experience, but amazing networks born of that
yes.
experience. And so we've had over 20 customers in 2.5
Oh,
years,
wow.
and they've all been or repeat
Cool.
customers. Um, and so when we started, some of that non-intentionality, are these words? I
Yes,
think you know what I mean. Some of that
I do.
lack of intention was we honestly thought that because we were small, that we would be. There's a little bit of background noise. I'm not sure whose it is. Okay, cool. Because we were small, we thought that we would only appeal to smart clients. So we thought that we would have customers that were in like a 5 to 10 million range, or maybe 3 to 5,000 employees. And our very first customer was one of the largest IT companies globally in the world, and we came in very far upstream and helped them implement their first Workday instance. And did some pre-IPO planning for them. And then our next customer was large IT automotive. That person has brought us into what is now the largest AI company. We have serviced one of the largest global healthcare fintech companies. We are in, so the portfolio has actually grown far outside of what I think we imagined. We closed our biggest deal last week. So I
Oh,
think there is just this trajectory that's been something that I honestly am grateful for, and literally every day say thank you to God, the universe, and everything else I believe in. It's such a gift.
yeah. I
Clients,
love hearing.
and I mean that.
Yeah, I agree, Cara. Like clients are hard won and easy lost, right? And I remember that every single day. And I like personally, I'm so grateful for the people that give me a chance and an opportunity 10 years ago when I was starting up my day job at CXC. Because like you guys, we started off at zero. And as exciting as that is, it's really bloody humbling, right? And you really remember those people that you were fortunate enough to take a chance on you. I'm so happy, and I can name them now, and
Yeah.
I'm happy to do so, and I'll never forget that because they were really the fuel for any success that we've had.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I will say, I mean, I think we say all the time like our brand is trust, and we are so deliberate and so in depth with our customers, and in turn they are that way with us. We have learned from them. There are things we co-develop with customers. We can't take all the credit. We don't walk in and know everything all the time. Um, but we learn and grow together. One of the things that we're really mindful of, for instance, is customer career directory. One of the first things we ask when we're doing our intake is like, where do you want to go? Like, where do you want to be? How are we going to grow this? How are your decisions today not only going to impact your company, but also your function, your employees, then you personally? And how do we design things that weave together multiple goals at once? Um, and in order to do that and to be so far upstream with customers, to be so embedded in their behaviors and their decision making, they have to trust you and you have to trust them. And it is absolutely a partnership, and I think that's part of it too, is, Christina and I, we always say, it was like, we're not above any work. So we walk into lots of rooms with executives and give lots of big ideas and big advice and meaningful advice, but we also do a boatload of work. There's a lot of rolling up the sleeves and getting it done. And it's because people are trusting that we're going to execute. It's just you've got to not only say it, but you've got to be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Got to walk the walk. And like Cara, thanks so much for sharing your story with our audience as well, and what you guys do at C Squared. One of the things that has been a topic of interest on the show over the years, Cara, is around the labor market paradox, or such a crazy labor market, right? So up until very recently, in most Western labor markets, we've had full employment or close to that. Now, some economies are dropping out of that, um, and others are sort of maintaining, right? But then on the other side, you've got all these hiring freezes, workers being displaced by AI or technology, people being made redundant or reduction in forces. And there seems to me, and I'm a sense-based person as well as a data-based person, Cara. There seems to be this sense of uneasiness, right? Within the global economy, but also as it pertains to the extended workforce and contingent workforce. And then if you look at most of the major MSP and staffing companies, most of them have retrenched from an earnings perspective, at least the major ones that are on listed markets. So I don't expect you to know all the answers to this, Cara, but I suppose my first question is, do you feel that too, or do you see that based on the data points? And two, where do you think this is going to go? Like, do you think hiring's going to pick up again? Whether it's contractors, gig, or permanent, or do you think companies are going to look more internally for skills?
I mean, there's a do I think what do I think will happen? What do I think should happen? I mean, yeah, the labor
Both.
paradox. It is it is real, but it is also not new. In our world is going through a lot of changes and challenges. Just watch the news and pick a station, any station, and there's a sense of unrest in many ways. I think there are real impacts to businesses when we have broad stroke announcements coming out of any government, paired with regional instabilities. Um, I think that creates a climate where companies retract on hiring, and where employees who may want to grow or leave get a little scared to move on. And so you have a delta group of unemployed people who um, have a harder time finding jobs. I think that you look at some company behaviors and there are ways to solve those, but time works against us. So, what do I mean by that? Company leadership, executives, stakeholders might say things like we need to drop X from our bottom line. They bring in big consulting firms who do transformation projects that look at spreadsheets that say you don't need this, and it's very much cost reduction over anything else. And then you couple that with a hiring freeze. What happens is you see an influx of contingent and non-employee labor because work still has to get done. You see some pressure because there's some big announcements like, hey, we're going to have X amount of AI. I don't know that in practice that's actually as fast as like reading about it makes us feel like it is. Um, but one of the ways that I'm at least encouraging customers and thinking about things differently, and I hope will be more of a trend this year, is looking at some of the AI forward skills based hiring tools. So, like, if I take like an Anopoly, right? Like, this is a tool, it's very AI forward. There's advanced skills matching. It's been trained for a number of years. And you think about the capability of, instead of bringing in a big consulting firm, instead of going through a transformation, of actually dropping in a strategic workforce plan and being able to say, here's where we're looking at a layoff, but here's where these people we're laying off have a transferable skill to work that we still think will be core to our business 6 months or a year from now. And then how can you tie that into internal mobility programs? And when I think about internal mobility, there's a sense check about tying that in with contingent labor. And so as you're creating more of that workforce ecosystem, you can find places for the work to get done with humans that are unemployed in different ways. Um, and so I think like with the labor paradox, I think we all have to remember putting people to work does not always mean making people an employee. And
Right.
so one of the ways to solve that labor paradox is both to become much more savvy with the tools that you're bringing in to be able to track and manage skills and skills gap and reallocate resources to the right places. Synthetic labor may become part of that over time, but then to be able to still carve out this is what's needed and to keep feeding those machines with all types of labor. So not having your gig FMS over here and your VMS here and your HCM here, those systems need to all be able to talk somehow. And if it takes an overlay system to do it, then so be it, right? That becomes like
Yes.
finance and technology and tech debt planning. That's not really like a workforce plan as much as people want to talk about
Yeah.
it like.
Like, and Cara, on that point, that's what I'm really interested to see, a technology layer that's been developed that can essentially weave or bring those ecosystem or those ecosystem partners together, right? Because like I think about even my own business that I run day to day, right? We've got an MSP, we've got small amount of direct sourcing, we've got marketplace partners, we've got an EOR, AOR capability, we manage SOW, right? But then we need to work with our VMS partners. We need to work with larger MSPs, right? And like, it, I haven't seen anything that really brings like a total solution where all those independent parts are fully integrated, right? From a technology perspective. Not yet. Have you seen anything out there from a technology perspective that brings it all together?
Not anything that could pass like a
Yeah.
secure
Sniff test.
environment. Like I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of great ideas.
Yes.
I've heard a lot of great concepts around this, and I've seen people making strides in the right directions. But I mean, there's a lot of risk component in this, right? Because
Right.
there's a lot of conversational AI that has to be embedded. Like if you're going to talk about it more as like an orchestration tool above, then
Yeah.
you also
That's
have to
it.
understand. You have to be able to like safely load in policies, safely load in
Yes.
guardrails. There's a lot of business realities that tear those
True.
ideas down. I actually think it would be um, less important to have like one tool. I mean, I'm saying like when I said one tool overlay in my earlier statement, what I was really thinking about was like one entry point. So, you know,
Gotcha.
you have a front door that feeds in
Yes. Yes.
classifieds, right? Like you can have a front buying door,
Yeah.
even if you're a procurement based organization where your program does not sit in HR, you can still
Yes.
have a front door that's I want to buy labor.
Yeah. I
I
love
don't like
that.
to say buy labor is like a terrible phrase, but
No,
I
but
grew up
I get it. I get
I
it.
can say it still. But you know, I need to procure some kind of skill or labor that can feed into a system that can appropriately classify, and then that system is smart enough to give you some type of rate comparison in the moment to say, hey, like that's most likely services procurement. It's going to cost you this. You could supplement with staff aug. It would cost you that. Um, and then that system is smart enough to go, okay, so you're picking this, and it can actually API into the right modules that can do their things. Like, I think we as an industry get a little bit like, um, it's so funny because I am like an ideator, and at the same time, again, this is where the practical realities and the experience come in because it's like you could have this amazing orchestration layer pushing this way, pushing down, but actually pushing this way will likely make a lot more sense to an organization um, because you already have those layers behind it, right? You already have a VMS, you already have an HCM, you already have a procure to pay tool, and you've probably spent millions and millions of dollars on them. So it's impractical to think you're going to be like, never mind, all at once. Like it just doesn't work that way. That's
Agree.
a strategy that has to happen over 5 to 8 years. And that's why it's important strategically to understand, are you an HR centric organization that is looking at global total talent? Are you a procurement centric organization that is looking more at cost compression and risk mitigation? Not that you can't have all in both, but it does change the strategy and the tool set that makes sense for you.
I agree with your analysis, Cara. The other thing I was thinking about is it just relating to the staffing sector. Like if you were a recruitment vendor or a staffing provider, you didn't have an MSP, you didn't have a payroll, you didn't have direct sourcing, you didn't have services procurement. What the hell do you do to protect your business? And is your business going to be sustainable and viable in the long term or medium term?
Yeah, I mean, data centralization is, always going to be the first key. You need data to support and tell accurate stories. And so centralizing data, whether it's through a VMS or other type of tool, is important. I'm seeing companies that don't have as much, um, I'm seeing companies that don't have as much rigor around buying or sourcing talent today are starting to use stepping stone behaviors, right? Hypersimplification. We need a white glove way to compliantly get humans into roles. That's likely not, we don't need everything the MSP has, and we don't need all the bells and whistles. We need um, a tech forward EOR that can take any level of headcount in a geographically dispersed environment and get that headcount structured into their own technology in a way that can integrate with a VMS. And then you're looking at the VMSs, and then you're looking at the graduation of, now we have all this data and we see how these things are happening. We're looking at supply leakage here. We're looking at risk over here. We're looking at cost here. Now our next step is, building out that fuller suite of that VMS, making sure that that data is moving over. That also saves a lot of time in an implementation. Um, and then looking at, and we need to have the right suppliers in the right hubs. Size of company matters a lot in this answer, I suppose, as well. Did I answer your whole question, Connor?
Yeah, you did, Cara. You did
Yeah.
indeed. Cara, I wanted to extend that the question maybe further and look at talent marketplaces because I watched with great interest Upwork's recent announcement about their new brand, and they acquired a company called Bubty, and they acquired a company called Asen or Accent. I'm sorry, Francis, if I've butchered your company's name wrong. Not intentional, but we can correct it. And Upwork has been wanting to move into what I would call the enterprise space for some time. But as you'll appreciate and know, Cara, there's been a huge amount of talent marketplaces come into the marketplace. And then you've got freelancer.com, which has, I think, over 100 million people, but on its platform, but most of them are underutilized, right? They sort of do specific tasks. And I suppose my question is the following. Do you anticipate that talent marketplaces will be embraced in a more strategic and less ad hoc fashion by the enterprise? That's question one. And then question number two is, um, do you think the talent marketplaces will essentially replace the staffing vendor supply side?
So these are opinions, not facts. Should
Yes, of
probably say
course, of course.
that. But I think that where there's been slow adoption of talent marketplaces and FMSs in particular is in the inability or unwillingness in some cases to figure out how to work with a VMS. I will bring it back to the reality of company decisions and the CIO who has purchased a VMS. It's heavily embedded in every part of the company's workflow globally. It has been celebrated in some cases as a compliance measure. People have built X amount of years of their career being able to use the metrics and the data coming from a VMS to make data-driven decisions. And to walk in and think you're going to completely disrupt that in an active environment is, to me, a little bit immature. I think if you could instead say, yes, I'm disruptive, but I can learn to work within an existing ecosystem to better a client. And you could show a roadmap of how that transition or transformation or evolution or whatever word we're using evolves over a 3 or 5 year period. You'd get a different response.
Yes.
Um, but I think that that has slowed the adoption, is this sort of like it's us or them. And I've heard
Yeah.
it a lot. And
Yes.
in every conversation I'm in with buyers and with the enterprises and the enterprise decision makers, it's like, well, okay, I guess then the one we have. So I think there's that. I think that with that being said, it is ideal to have a talent marketplace and to have a freelance management system. These are huge bodies of resources that companies need um, to be able to fulfill their requirements. And so I don't know why and I don't think they're putting staffing companies out of business, because in some ways I think staffing companies are far more well positioned, right? If you are a major energy supplier that's been in business for 40 years and you have the third largest STEM population in your database, you are likely actually better positioned to create a repeatable talent place for
Right.
your work, for your customers, right? So I don't think it's out of or pushing away from. I think it's just that legacy providers of VMSs and traditional staffing would do themselves a favor by allowing for more creativity and investment in some of these alternate ecosystems. And at the same time, the alternate ecosystems that have been very successful and serve a great purpose and do a great job. Love the guys at Bepti for sure. So happy for them with their
Yeah.
acquisition. Um, but look, it's coming together, right? They're not on their
Yes.
own. They're
Yeah.
merging.
Yeah.
So you know, they're kind of all starting to go this way. So I think it's not it's like either the legacy ones have to start opening their arms to other ways of working and investing in that, and taking the humans they already have that know their stuff and putting them into those roles, not just like starting new divisions,
Yes.
or the ones that have been solo, I'm over here and I just want to do it myself, are going to come together, and it's going to create a different type of competition.
And I love your analysis. Like, Cara, one of the other things that I hadn't planned to talk about with you, and I hope it's okay to bring it up, is around direct sourcing. I think I I
Mm.
I think we're on like our fifth iteration, direct sourcing 5.0, right? And I think that actually speaks volumes for some of the problems associated with this phraseology around it. And my question is, do you think there's do you think it's a sustainable business model, direct sourcing? Um,
Think it is insane that we are still having this conversation. I think it is insane more people have not adopted direct sourcing as a philosophy.
yes,
If you are a company that gets 5,000 resumes a day or more, or 25 or 50, as some of these big logos do, there's zero possibility you are actually screening all that talent effectively.
agree.
That's just math. If you have the ability to have a company who specializes in recruitment that understands your business, be able to dip into your resumes and screen them and see if those could be a good fit. This is one aspect of direct sourcing. If they could be a good fit, then you can still retain the right to own those resumes. Why wouldn't you do that? And it's like a 10% discount.
Yeah,
Everybody's happy. Why wouldn't you do that? If you are a company with talent attraction issues, or you're in weird locations, or you have very bespoke but repeatable, right? I'm thinking about like some of my brethren in oil and gas or drilling or mining, right? And you're in like Papua New Guinea, right? Why you wouldn't set up a talent pool and have a specialist provider who understands that recruitment fill a pot of pre-certified people that you can pick out for, so that like when you need somebody quickly, or when you know you're going to need people for ebbs and flows for your direct customers, you would do that again at a discount. I don't know why you wouldn't just do that. It doesn't make sense to me. However, what does make sense to me is that the marketing and the go-to-market around most direct sourcing does make it sound like it is an MSP replacement, which it's not, doesn't have to be, don't know why.
agree.
And it also makes it sound like it's hyper monetization of every step of recruitment. And so I think there's like a GTM issue way
Yeah.
more than an actual product issue. Because direct sourcing is not new, by the way. We had that
No,
like in my customer in like, I don't know,
in the
2000.
80s. Yeah, like it was called something else. I mean, like you might
Yeah.
just have one staffing provider doing all the bloody staffing work,
Oh,
right?
the good old targeted work order.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
it. That's it.
For
And
sure.
I agree. I think go to market. I think it's. I think maybe the commercial model is needs some work as well because most of it has been on a success based basis, right? But the way it's componentized or compartmentalized, it's not really geared up for that. You might have a direct sourcing tech provider, you might have a curation partner, you might have an EOR provider, and I haven't seen anything that truly fully integrates it, right?
But now we're back to the problem I was just stating, where everybody wants
Yes,
to be over here and not over
yes,
here, and nobody wants to play with each other in support of doing the right thing for the customer. And so
yes.
that's where I'm saying either VMSs, you just saw, Beeline just bought MBO.
Yeah,
These aren't hard things to figure out. You see like Workday's hyper consolidation. I mean, if you have HCM as your hub and you're looking at some of those spokes, where is this headed? Um, Direct sourcing technology and direct sourcing is not the same thing, and that probably is also part of it, right? The conflation of thinking. And I guess the VMSs, in fairness, haven't really built for it up until recently. So, but I mean, you've built a lot of APIs, I'm sure, with your software, your tech, and I've built a lot of APIs for my customers, and I have yet to find a tech that you couldn't build a really sturdy API that can
yeah,
still use that curation partner as a recruiting lever within a larger ecosystem that then feeds the right applicants into a VMS.
yeah. I agree. I think all as well. Like maybe we've overcomplicated curation, EOR. I mean, let's just identify what work needs done by when, and just get that worker onboarded in the most compliant way. I think. Anyway, maybe I'm too simplistic, Cara. That is my problem as well.
No, I think that's what customers want, though. I mean, I think customers are looking for simplified. I mean, there are compliance layers that are not satisfied when you have MSPs owning supplier contracts. And so there are ways to simplify these processes and take out layers that previously were thought to indemnify and actually create more complexity and actually, in some ways, more compliance risk.
Yeah, I agree. And Cara, one of the things I've become obsessed with is resource demand planning, right? Which we didn't really touch on. But the other thing is about artificial intelligence and artificial general intelligence and its potential, negative or positive. But from I'm feeling really concerned about AI at the moment and have been for the last 3, 4 years, right? And I'm wondering, do you share those concerns around jobs and how work gets done? And is there going to be any negative or actual sorry, is there going to be a negative impact from AI on people and jobs?
I mean, the best advice and the advice that I'm giving, so I'll hedge a bit. Like, I mean, is there concern? Of course. I mean, like sometimes I feel like I'm in like the wheelbarrow in the like Pioneer. I get on LinkedIn, I'm like everybody else is in a rocket ship, and it takes just talking to enterprises to realize that's likely not true, right? I was at a conference recently and I said something about AI and somebody else was like, I just want bulk uploads. Right. So like sometimes customers help bring me back to earth and settle a little of that. But when we talk about the jobs, I mean, one of the things that I think people in general, like the advice again I give even my younger family members is there's a lot of free education around AI right now. I mean, if I think about consulting, I mean, is AI going to be able to give you all the things I do? No, but maybe like some of the detailed rate analysis and some of the, um, you know, there might be things that AI will take off of my plate, and I might have customers that start to do it themselves. But there's other things that probably won't, like the nuances of navigating large, complex global organizations and the complexity around change management. So, what am I doing? I'm taking an 8-week certification in change readiness and AI change planning that is not very expensive and is available to just about anyone. I think there's a lot of free courses on AI. I think people do have to play, and I actually got a little bit of negative feedback on a podcast I was on about a year ago when I said this, but
Really?
I do think people have to sort of remember that your career is your own and you're here to drive it. And therefore, if if you are in a role that you think is in a higher level of replacement by AI, it would behoove you to start some of the free education online and think about where your skills can line up to other things. I think
That's
that's probably
solid.
a good
Yeah.
way of looking at life, and then be able to think about what companies are doing and research where they're trending and start to align yourself and use AI to do that. I mean, I asked AI if I am a consultant and these are the 5 things that customers have bought, which of these things do you think AI is least likely to replace in the next 2 years? And one of them was change management.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, why not use it to our advantage? And but I think the advice that you might have been, in my view, unfairly criticized for, Cara, is solid. Right? If you think you're at risk, bloody do something about it, right? There's no white knight coming or white knightess coming to rescue you. You got to rescue yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think companies have kind of proven that, right? I mean, companies have proven that like the loyalty is equal. They're going to
I,
make the best decision for the company, and you have to make the best decision for yourself. And as long as those things are aligned, you're good. And when you're not aligned, you're probably not in a great spot, and you should be thinking about how to get yourself into one. But I'm
I,
an entrepreneur, so I get that. I know I'm simplifying the emotion around it.
Um, I actually don't think you are. I think you're giving really great advice, entrepreneur or not, Cara, because like it's not a two-way street anymore, right? It's a one-way street. You're only as useful until you're not, right? That's it. Um, that's the truth of the matter. Like businesses run on profit, right? They don't run on goodwill, and we're in a capitalist world, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, and it's about the bottom line, and if the bottom line is not working, then unfortunately people get displaced. That's the way it is.
I mean, you can also make it fun. I mean, this is like what Christina and I started doing when we started C Squared, and what we're doing with customers today is pretty night and day. I mean, we'll always be doing VMS implementations as long as there's VMSs. That was our first project, and it'll probably always be one. Um, but there's a lot of nuance and difference to the way that we're assessing current states to the way than how we were 5 years ago. There's significant difference to how far upstream and the ecosystem design. That's all being driven by the market. I mean, it's more fun. I'm super glad that we're doing this work, but it is definitely leaning into what customers need. And so if I'm an employee, it's leaning into what the business needs. It's not any different in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. And Cara, like we touched briefly on some of the consolidation out there in our sector. Um, we talked about the Upwork, sorry, Lyft, the new brand through the consolidation. We talked about behind MBO. We've seen Workday consolidate further or acquire further. We've seen Dayforce restructure recently as well with PE backing, and they're going to go, it looks like, on a bit of an acquisition spree. And I suppose my question to you, Cara, is what do you think is driving this consolidation wave that we're seeing and have been seeing for some time?
I'll be really like candid. I mean, I say things with strength when I'm really confident, and this isn't an area I'm hyper confident in, if I'm honest. I mean,
Gotcha.
part of what I think it is just there's so much uncertainty and so much fear. Things probably, if you're a small business, it probably feels like a safe bet to be acquired, and like everybody loves a little bit of extra cash. And if you are a larger company who, again, has been providing 1 lane or 2 lanes or 3 lanes of service to customers, and now you're trying to lean in because you need to retain or grow your market share, it is likely just better business to buy than build. And so the conversion of those two mindsets is likely just making it a good market for it, honestly.
I love it. And Cara, I just want to touch on something briefly. We've seen still return to office mandates, which really surprised me as a sort of remote work advocate, I suppose is probably the best way to put it. What's your take on these return to office mandates? Do you think they're warranted or problematic or somewhere in between?
I mean, some of it is our government philosophies, right? I mean, the reality is, um, if commercial real estate busted, particularly in the US, it could crash our economies. So there is an element of we can't have everybody working from home um, for that reason. There's also a reality of if you are a technology company or a data company, it's a lot easier and safer to control, to safeguard that by having people in an office than having them at home. Um, on the flip side of that, I still think underneath it all there is, I don't know, this is very philosophical. It's an opinion, it's not fact, but my observation or just my gut is that also during COVID there was this sort of employee uprising and this sort of very uncomfortable imbalance of power that had not been personal power in how we spent our time, ran our days, where we were. And I think that that probably wasn't super comfortable for some of the, um, like my dad. My dad is retired, but my dad is always like, I think work from home's crazy. Like, I went every single day to the hospital and did my thing every single
Yeah.
day. And so I think about like if my dad were president of a company, he would think things like, you guys should all be here or else maybe you're not working. Um, and so I just think there's like chronic trust issues between employees and employers, and they don't, I mean, listen to how I just described like companies will do what's best for the company, you have to do what's best for you. I mean, that's a really different mentality from like Ma Bell, where you had pensions and everybody stayed for 30 years. So I don't know. I non-answered. I'm not a big fan of a return to office mandates. I don't think they're healthy for anyone, and I think it's like closing the barn door after the fire. People work from home effectively for years, and so I think giving employees choice makes more sense. But I don't know that it's realistic, and I don't think it's comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I think given some of the economic uncertainty, that's almost become like an employer's the power dynamic has shifted almost in a way back to the employer. Whereas before, to your point, Cara, people could have voted with their feet and said, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else. But those opportunities at the moment are lifted, but or sorry, are limited. But hopefully that changes. So yes,
Changes, and I also think that we have to find better ways to safeguard data from anywhere.
yeah,
I
agreed.
mean,
Like
that just
that's
seems like a
that's it.
good thing to have happen no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. I like completely with you, Cara. Completely with you. And Cara, I'd love to finish our conversation, if I may, with a question that we ask all of our guests, Cara, which is this: What, in your opinion, is the future of work, and what is your prediction for the future of work?
I mean, I think the future of work is frictionless. I have a few customers that say it. Frictionless user experience. I think people are continuing to get faster. It is easier to get answers. All you have to do is go to ChatGPT and find a whole lot of things out. And I think that the patience for cumbersome processes and cumbersome technologies is just the patience is thin and it's only going to get thinner. And companies are going to push harder and harder on all of us to show up faster, better, and with processes that have been worked out between all of us providers on the back end and feels like a lot of one click and two click on the front end.
I love that, Cara, that seamless, frictionless experience that our customers in the buying community so need. And Cara, thanks so much for your optimistic taking things. It's really nice actually to have our first podcast after the summer with yourself, and I'm really grateful that you chose to come on the show and express that optimism, but also showcase your experience and expertise. I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for taking the time, Cara.
Thank you so much. You're a joy. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you to you and the whole CXC team.
Oh, cheers, Cara. And Cara, just for the benefit of our audience, I want to reach out to you and your co-founder at C Squared Workforce Solutions. Where is the best place that they can come and find you and say, Cara, we've got a problem or we're thinking about this. We want to weigh up our options. How can they come and talk to you, Cara? How can they get in touch?
can go to my LinkedIn at Cara Kresge, and there's a booking link, and you're happy to use it. And I'm sure I feel like my email's everywhere, so I'm pretty easygoing about this. So please get in touch.
Wow, thanks, Cara. And there you have it, folks. Cara Kresge, co-founder, chief growth officer at C Squared Workforce Solutions. Cara, have a great day. Thanks so much for doing the show, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.